Welcome to Teen Up, a podcast that digs deeper into the thoughts of teenagers' mind about the wonders of the world.
If you're new here, I'm your host, Isabella.
And I'm Glenn. If you're not, welcome back.
Here is a quick disclaimer. We are two teenagers that are doing our best to research everything. However, we are not experts, so if we offend anyone or say something wrong, we want to apologize in advance. Please email us to tell us what was wrong. Thank you.
In the past year, conflicts arose among different cultural groups. People are attacking each other verbally and physically because of their skin color.
So we started thinking, why? Why are we hurting each other? We are all human beings, but what causes the difference between groups and why do we fight people?
Among these disparities, we believe that culture is the common divisor. You can really argue that all differences are related to culture. So this month on Teen Up, we are going to talk about culture.
So we are going abroad, mainly America, in the future for college. And this is why we decided to do this topic to get us more familiar with what we will encounter in the future.
Because as everybody know, people in America come from many different places and they all have different cultures. So we think that is what we will definitely encounter, but that is also something that we are very inexperienced about.
Like Glenn said, we are very inexperienced because we grow up in a place that has only one main culture, which is just Taiwanese Chinese culture, and we're only used to hang out with people our way. And yeah, Taiwan is not a very diverse place. So
if throughout this season we offend anyone, we want to apologize in advance. Like we said, we are very inexperienced in this topic, and we do really hope that we can learn how to not offend people of different culture in this process.
Right. So if you feel like we have said something wrong, please do DM us or email us to tell us what went wrong, and we are very willing to learn more about it.
Yes. Okay. So throughout the season, we will be mainly talking about Asian culture, specifically East Asian culture, or you might say Sinosphere. And we will be talking about European American culture and African American culture. And we picked these three cultures because we think, well, first of all, we grow up in Taiwan. So Asian culture, East Asian culture is the culture that we are most familiar with.
Right.
And we picked the other two. That's because we are unfamiliar with it. So first, we want to learn more about it. And second, we will very likely be encountering these two cultures in the future.
So we're talking about these three cultures because that is what we're going to see. But that does not mean it is the majority of the people. There are definitely other cultures that we will not be including in this season.
Yeah, and we do not think that any culture is superior to the other. We only picked these three because they are what we will be encountering.
Right.
Okay, so let's start with a brief introduction of these three cultures. Like, how did they form? Under what condition did they form? Stuff like that. So it's mainly history. Okay, so let's start with East Asian culture sphere. And this would include Chinese culture, Japanese culture, Korean culture, Vietnamese culture, and more. So basically, countries in East Asian have this East Asian culture.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned earlier, it's also called Sinosphere. So this culture is mainly stemmed from Chinese culture. And so in our history class, we learned that there are 4 major civilizations of the ancient world, right?
Right.
Like the Sumerian, Egyptian, and Indus Valley, and China. So when I'm researching, I found that because traditionally we talk about Yellow River as where the culture started
For East Asia.
Yeah, but when I'm researching, I found out that people say that they found even earlier evidence of civilization in the Yangtze River, which is the longest river in China. But either way, they both started in a very similar way. I have to say that this is a very generalized way of describing how this culture formed. And definitely the culture I mentioned, like Japanese culture, Korean culture, like even Taiwanese culture, like they are very different from one another nowadays, but they can all be traced back to
China.
Yeah. But China is very big, right?
Right.
And actually there are many different groups in China. They speak different languages, they have different cultures, they wear different things, eat different foods. And we what we're talking about today is mainly in the Yellow River and Yangtze River, that area. And we do know that there are different cultures in China, but the culture in these two rivers are the ones that influenced other the most.
Okay.
So we might learn in geography class before, China has a monsoon climate.
Definitely.
And East Asia, including China, the climate is dominated by monsoons. So it means that we have a wet summer and a dry winter. So most of the rain comes in summer. So that means that we have only like half a year that's raining and the other half we're not raining.
Right.
So it means that we need irrigation system.
To save the water, right?
Yeah. And to, plant stuff. So to have a large scale irrigation system, you need to have an organized society. So I think that is the main factor that influenced the Chinese culture. This culture started on a floodplain and so connected back to the irrigation system. People grow things on the floodplain and they built this culture. And I think the culture is definitely influenced by it.
Right.
So for the thinking, like for the ideas, they mainly come from three sources. It's Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism. These are three philosophical views that mostly influence the Chinese culture. And we can still see it today.
Right. Like, in Taiwanese culture, we also have Confucianism, which is something that our schools teach still, and Buddhism. A lot of Buddhists in Taiwan, and Taoism as well, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. So, we will be exploring these things, like the things I mentioned earlier, in later episodes. But this brief introduction is just to maybe have like a background knowledge for both of us and for our listeners, so that when we're going into the future episodes, we can just refer back to
the first episode.
Okay, so we are finished with East Asian culture and we're gonna take a break. And after the break, we will be talking about European American culture and African American culture.
Welcome back. So now we're gonna start with European American culture.
Okay, so this one is mainly from Europe, and I mean it's in the name, it's European. So these people emigrated to America during the 1500s and they brought their culture with them.
Right.
So these people mainly come from what's now the United Kingdom or Germany.
Right.
So these people are mainly Germanic people. And okay, so Europe is like roughly split into three parts. The Germanic part, Romance part, and Slavic part. So it's in a linguistic point of view.
Right.
But they can all be traced back to Greek culture. So they all originated from Greek culture. But the European American culture is mainly influenced by the Germanic offshoot of this big culture. And we have people from England, we have people from Germany, many different places.
Mm-hmm.
And what they have in common is that most of them moved to that place during the same time. And they were like seeking for a new place to live.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this can also be seen in like the Puritans, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Like these people moved because of their religious beliefs and how they have different religion than people back in their hometown. So they moved to this new world to seek for refuge and to start their own
community, their own life,
yeah.
to continue their religious practice.
And this definitely influenced like later part of the culture, like how it evolves into the culture today.
Mm-hmm.
And as we might see in literature, right?
Right.
People have this puritanical stage.
Uh-huh.
It's like people are writing about religion. People are very devoted to this religion ideas. And I think that's what shapes this era of European American culture the most.
Uh-huh. Which is like mostly in the northeast part of America.
So as American move toward the West, they just like bring this culture with them, and that's why this whole like America is like under this culture's influence.
Mm-hmm.
Because see, Canada was under the United Kingdom's colonization, so it naturally is influenced by this culture.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, it still is, right?
Yeah. So one thing we have to note here is that like French-speaking people in Canada, they are not in this group. Like I don't think they are counted in this European American like culture group.
Mm-hmm. Why?
I think it's they speak like a different language and obviously have very different culture.
Mm-hmm.
So the linguistic difference is that French is a Romance language and English and German is a Germanic language. So they are from different like group.
Mm-hmm. Even like from the language branch.
Yeah, so they are different. They cannot be counted like in the same culture group. Anyways, let's move on to their beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So their beliefs are mainly influenced by Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates.
Oh, the three main Greek philosophers.
Yeah, and I think you can really still see it today, like in education especially, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Because see, in the East Asia culture, we have like this kind of Confucius type of education.
Mm-hmm.
And in European American culture, which is like in America today, they have a very different kind of education system. So I think that is where we can see the influences.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Even our teacher at school, they do emphasize the way of learning, using the Greek way. Like, we should be continuously thinking of why is it like this, and using logical thinking but Confucianism is a lot different. I don't know. I feel like we want to be more humble, so we don't ask much.
Yeah.
And we just have to listen to our teachers, like what they have to say, and basically just memorize that.
Yeah, it's very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't talk about how climate influenced this region. And that is because they range greatly, right? Like from Europe and moving to America and like spreading from the East Coast to the West.
Mm-hmm. And even Europe itself, right? England is so different from France.
Yeah, so I don't think like when I'm researching, I didn't really find anything that says that how weather has influenced their culture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so let's move on to African American culture. So I might have to apologize in advance because this one is the one that I'm the most unfamiliar with. So African American culture is rooted in native African cultures and mainly West Africa and Central Africa.
Mm-hmm.
These people were shipped to America due to slavery and slave trade. So it's like the Columbian exchange.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so basically at that time, the history of that time was during the Columbian exchange. It was between the Americas, Europe, and Africa, these three continents. And what Africa gave was slaves, and Europe produced manufactured goods, and America produced crops for Europeans to process it. So at that time, slave trade was very common, and a lot of people come in ships, and they have started to settle down and became a major part of the American culture, I would say. It's just back then, I feel like it's more suppressed by the white culture because they are the minority in this American society.
Yeah, and the African American culture is really influenced by these historical events, like slave trade and slave owning and these kind of stuff.
Right.
So the Africans believe that spirits dwelled in their surrounding nature. Their belief is more based on nature, like natural things.
All right. Yeah, when they were still in West Africa or like Africa, most African cultures are animists, which means that they believe in animal gods. I'm not saying all cultures in Africa do, but that is mainly what they believe in. So when they moved across the ocean to Americas, they brought that belief but they were later influenced by the European culture to believe in Christianity.
Yeah, and after these African people were in America, because those people are from different African cultures, and they kind of like blended, and that is what we see today. Of course, with like they are influenced from Christianity.
Right.
And this culture, when I'm researching, I found that they are very different on its own. They are very influential in art and music and literature, I think. Like,
I would say, yeah.
there are many famous African American musicians, artists, and they also have this dialect that is called the Ebonics.
Oh, really?
And it was once called like their new language, but I think later people say that it's just a dialect.
How is it different from others?
So I think they have like their own dictions, and they have different ways of saying things, or maybe like some slang, you know?
Oh, so it is still mainly English?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so because of their history with slavery, so their culture didn't really become dominant, or people didn't see this culture until slaves are emancipated. And their culture's development is really, really much related to slavery and what happened during this period of time.
Right. A lot of songs were produced to show their daily lives. Literature as novels that were written back then really showed what their lifestyle was like as well.
And also the belief in Christianity, that is also influenced by their lifestyle and their status back then. Yeah, and that is the brief introduction that we have.
Right.
So this is the first episode of this season. We briefly introduced 3 cultures that we pick that we think we will be encountering in the future.
Okay, so in the next episode, we will be digging deeper into these 3 cultures, like how it is nowadays, how their lifestyle are very different from the past. Just how they have evolved over time.
Remember to come back next week to listen to a more in-depth view of these three cultures.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Remember to like, subscribe, and share our channel.
Also, comment down below if you have any thoughts. You could click on the bell to get notified when we upload a new video as well.
Thank you and bye.